Thanks so much for listening to the Creative Psychotherapist podcast. I am really excited to bring this next installment. It is episode 5 of the 2023 Voices from the Expressive Therapy Summit special series. And today I'm having a conversation with um, Kate Merkle, who is a licensed clinical social worker. She is a registered dietitian, and she's also a psychodramatist. And in this conversation, we talk about how she interweaves these practices to provide a unique container of care for her clients, and also about some of the trainings that she offers through the Chicago Center for Psychodrama. And of course, she's going to be teaching several um, uh, trainings at the upcoming Expressive Therapy Summit. The first is going to be a virtual all day workshop, and that is going to be via Zoom. And it is going to be um, like a kickoff to promote the first Midwest Expressive Therapy Summit, which is going to be happening in person in Chicago. So if you are a listener from kind of the central United States area, it might be a great opportunity to attend the summit if you've never been. And in that virtual training, she's going to be teaching a bit about integrating Brené Brown's Daring Way approach with the expressive arts for courageous healing and transformation. Sounds amazing. And that'll be in May, May 21st. It's an all-day event. You can find more about that on the summit's website, www.expressivetherapysummit.com. And then at the actual in-person Chicago event over the weekend of June 23rd through 25th, um, she's going to be teaching two trainings, one on embodied healing using action techniques and psychodrama to transform the treatment of eating disorders with her colleague, Dr. Brittany Lakin-Starr. And then independently, she's also going to be teaching on the importance of nutrition and trauma recovery for all counselors and therapists, which I think would be a really great training if you're able to attend. Just learning a little bit more about nutrition and how it impacts people's mental health can be a huge asset in terms of holistic practice, and I think helpful to understand, okay, what can I provide to my clients in that regard? And when do I need to refer them to somebody who has more training in and licensing in nutrition and diet? And that's going to be on June 25th as well. So check those out. You can find more information on the summit's website. And without further ado, here's our conversation.
The Creative Psychotherapist is the official podcast of the Creative Clinicians Corner, a practice-building resource for creative psychotherapists. TCP Podcast is the cast for creative, expressive, and experiential-focused psychotherapists curious to learn how to design, build, and scale a thriving private practice. Your host, Raina Lombardi, interviews successful therapists about the tools and strategies they have used to develop creative-focused practices. They also talk about the products, services, and side hustles they have developed using their knowledge and creativity to enhance their therapy practices, make a greater impact in their communities, and diversify their income streams. Welcome. Now here's your host, Raina Lombardi.
Thanks so much for listening to the Creative Psychotherapist podcast. I'm your host, Raina Lombardi, and I'm very excited to bring this next episode of the Voices from the Expressive Therapy Summit special series. Our guest today is Kate Merkle. She is a licensed clinical social worker and a host of other credentials, registered dietitian, a certified psychodramatist, She's a certified Daring Way facilitator and experiential methodology based on the research of Dr. Brené Brown. Kate has over 18 years of experience helping people struggling with disordered eating and body image issues heal their relationship with food. She's the founder and director of Nourishment Works PC, a group therapy and nutrition practice specializing in the treatment of eating disorders. And she is the co director of the Chicago Center for Psychodrama, a training center offering trainings and workshops to hospitals, schools, and mental health practices throughout the Chicagoland area. Kate has been incorporating psychodrama into her group and individual work for the last 10 years. Welcome, Kate. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you about, you have a background in being a mental health provider, but then you also have an additional, I would imagine, degree to become a nutritionist. Did you need
Mhm.
to go back to school to do that as well?
Yeah, I actually did it the other way around. So I've been a dietitian. Um, I think this year will be 20 years. And I've always focused on eating disorder recovery. I have my own recovery, and so that is what keeps my flame lit and keeps it just really feeds my passion to continue to do this work. Um, I learned so much from my dietitian, and I feel like she taught me everything I know. Um, and so I'm forever grateful for that. And recovery has just been awesome. A lot of hard work, as most folks know. I always say it's the hardest work we'll ever do.
Hmm.
Um, and then later on in my profession, working at an IOP, I learned about psychodrama and action methods and expressive arts therapies. I fell in love with those because I felt like not only when we study something like psychodrama, we do our own personal work to learn how to then do the work with our clients and other individuals. And so it was like another level of recovery for me, even though I had recovery for so long, or what felt like recovery. This was like the next level, and I loved it. And it was so healing that I got serious and talked with my psychodrama trainers and my supervisors at the time of like, I really want to incorporate this into the work that I do. So then I decided to kind of dovetail. I did it at the same time. I got certified in psychodrama and went back to school and completed a social work degree. And then
Wow.
yeah, and honestly, as a dietitian that really focuses on disordered eating or body image concerns, I feel like I've always been pulled into holding space, being with folks. A lot of feelings come up when the session is
Hmm.
just around food, and body image and that specific, those specifics. And so I felt like it, doing well, one, my own recovery was like the school of hard knocks. And then being a clinician for so long as a dietitian in this arena, also, I felt like helped me get my sea legs and get me that, um, yeah, get me just like, yeah, the skills and the kind of, I want to say, strength to sit and do this work and be with individuals. And then the psychodrama and the action methods really allowed, for me to have even more skills,
Hmm.
to so much ambivalence in
Oh,
recovery,
yes. Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And folks can get stuck. There's a lot of stuck points. And so action methods are just the one thing I typically go to when folks are stuck, because it really helps them get unstuck and help see their angle of opportunities or their choices that they have when they don't feel like maybe they have choices.
Hmm. I think that's like the beauty in the experiential therapies, like no matter, what approach, whether it is, more narrative and dramatic, or if it's music or art, um, it it allows us to get around the unconscious defense mechanisms that are keeping us in that stuck place. And then once we see them, well, once it's seen, it can't be unseen. And that really helps to kind of push us forward in the work that we're doing in our own healing or helping others in that process.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I'm over here nodding. Yeah. Agreeing. Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And it's so, one thing I love about it is specifically the action methods and the psychodrama is that um it, it's me kind of out of the client's work. They're doing their own work and I can stay out of it, and they're having action insights, which are insights that happen and realizations that happen during the role reversal or the mirroring position or these basically techniques that we use or the empty chair. Um, and so there, it's not me kind of telling it to them or trying to show it to them or convince them of anything. It's them doing it all on their own, which is what I love.
Yeah,
Um, so then I can kind of stay out of it. My hopes for them, my stuff in general can stay out of it. They can have, and I'm guiding, I'm right there with them the whole time. But it's really nice for them to yeah, them to have their own experience and realize it all on their own. Um, and it's just so powerful. So I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful for the methods, and so are the folks um that use it in the practice that I run. They, people that are warmed up, I can get them warmed up to try these methods. They're really usually so grateful, ready to dive in each week.
that's
Yeah.
so exciting.
Yeah, it is.
I love that when you find an approach that really resonates and connects with the people that you're serving, and they're just as excited to use it as you are to offer it. It just makes it so much like there's just better flow in the process
Yeah.
of therapy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about, obviously you have done, your specialty is with working with eating disorders. How might your work as a dietitian also um, be beneficial for the lay practitioner? Um, I feel like there's so much research coming out on the relationship between food, nutrition, and mental health. Like,
Mhm.
what are some basics that clinicians really need to be aware of related to that topic when they're working with clients that maybe they don't necessarily have an eating disorder, but their nutrition is impacting their wellness and their ability to cope effectively with their mental health condition?
Yeah, I mean, I think about um just basic needs and where fuel, a lot of times I use the term fuel instead of food because for some folks food can be a little more activating, but just a lot of people can get on board with fueling and adequate fluids or hydration, and then sleep. All of these things are real basic, and so I think it's a great idea, especially like a for therapists that do trauma work, just to do a brief check-in on, are these things, and uh, are they tending to these things in an adequate way? If they're, and I always feel like, yes, I did I don't know, many years of nutrition school, and then um got a master's degree in public health and did an internship and rotate, like it was many years to become a dietitian. Um, and I still tell folks it's not rocket science. It's like making sure this is kind of a very like broad stroke in general, but like 3 meals, 2 to 3 snacks a day, or maybe it's 3 meals, 3 snacks, but I tell my clients regularly that I'm really trying to listen for adequacy. And so within the 3 meals, 3 snacks, ideally we want to hear just a blend of some fats, some carbs, some proteins, maybe some fruits and veggies, things like that. But it's like there's no such thing as perfect eating. So I always also remind the individuals I work with that we're not aiming for perfection. And in fact, if we were, that would be a little disordered. And
Yeah.
so we're really trying to be flexible. That's a huge tenet of recovery, is the flexibility. And so yeah, just kind of within the eating, there's some balance. So snacks are typically either pick 2, pick 3. And it would be something from like I said, the protein, like a protein and a carb, or a fat and, whatever. And I usually don't mind. I tell my clients that I'm real flexible with what they choose, and I usually want it to come from them. Because if I'm rattling off, oh, we'll have this and this, and they're like, I don't really like those foods. I always want to ask them, what would you be willing to put in as a snack around, I don't know, between breakfast and lunch. So it sounds like that's around 10:30. What would you be willing to put in? And I just start with where they are usually. And if it seems lacking and not adequate, so maybe they mention one thing, I'll usually say, can you put in, I don't know, is there other thing you can add to that? Again, I
Mhm.
kind of stay away from, sometimes I'll rattle off foods and mention certain foods, but I usually want it to really come from them, because I feel like there's so much more likely to then put it in. And then I do just a little bit of education around, because your body is going to just have so much more to work with if you put
Mhm.
in, let's just say it's a piece of fruit, and they have some peanut M&Ms. Um and I heard that they have they just got some peanut M&Ms or something like that. And they're saying, well, I could just put in some fruit at 10:30. And I'm like, well, you mentioned these peanut M&Ms. Would you be able to mix that in with and, you know, I'll see where they respond. But if they're like, yeah, and then I just do a little, like, your body's just going to have so much more to work with when you put in the nuts and that come in with the peanut M&Ms or whatever. I just mentioned the food that they've mentioned. It just gives your body so much more. And
Diversity.
exactly, variety is another big uh, part of recovery, is just being able to flex and have that variety piece. So there's that. And then the other real general basic is like consistency with fueling. So waking up within an hour or so of waking up, we want to be putting something in. And then and ideally there's some uh variety there. But again, I working, it's so individualized. That's the piece. It's
Sure.
really individualized. And I also, as we're talking about this, I'm thinking, if a therapist is in a session and the nutrition piece and the checking in with the food is taking up more than maybe 5 or 10 minutes, I would say it sounds like you might want to meet with a dietitian. I'm going to put that on your recommendation is. So let's, whether we spend some time in session doing a little Google search of folks that specialize in you do want to look for someone that specializes in disordered eating, or eating
Sure.
disorders, even if they don't have those per se. If that, yeah,
I
yeah,
totally agree, because I've heard from clients that have had really, really painful experiences with meeting with somebody, and they just they didn't have the understanding of their specific condition. And it
yeah,
was like really frustrating,
yeah,
for both parties. I think frustrating for the professional and frustrating for the client. And then, of course, and the client doesn't necessarily want to go back. But when the dietitian or nutritionist has a specialization in working with disordered eating, it can be such a beautiful resource and relationship and help to
Mhm,
that individual, even in terms of like having somebody to eat with, to be witnessed by, because I
mhm,
think so many people don't want to be seen when they're eating. Like that
mhm.
becomes part of it. Um,
Yeah, and the other thing that I would recommend to look for is, like at our practice at Nourishment Works, um, we do all of our work through a weight inclusive, non-judgmental lens. It's oftentimes named, like the health at every size paradigm or the non-diet approach or intuitive eating. And so you're just gonna find, I hope, I know, again, this is what we specialize in, but it's a more compassionate approach. It's really client centered. It's not us coming in with like, well, here's your meal plan, here's what you need to be eating, here's how you need to be following this. It's really kind of extrapolating what are your struggles or concerns or challenges that you're finding happening with food? How can we work and co-create and tackle this together? Knowing that I'm on your team, we're going to work together through this. If you don't like, I mean, I work with folks that are like, I hate vegetables. And I'm like, great, I'm glad you know what you like and don't like. Let's work together to find out what you do like. And then, and it's okay to not like, to have food preferences, and then food allergies come in. There's a lot of
oh,
can be a
yeah.
lot of different, barriers or just like things we have to navigate. Maybe they're not barriers, maybe it's just navigating it. And having a professional do that can be really helpful because ideally, as the therapist, you want to spend the time doing that therapeutic work, right?
Hmm.
And again, if you're spending more time checking in on those basics of like hydration and food, it's like this might be a place to go and spend that particular time, and then it frees up the therapist to do the therapeutic work,
Hmm.
right, or the trauma work. And then the other piece is really making sure people are nourished. I'm regularly educating clients on that. Maybe they're in EMDR, or they're doing dance movement therapy, or they're doing these more trauma somatic experiencing. I remind them like that's a lot of work. It's a lot of energy your body, your brain needs, right?
Yes, so true. I just did a 5-day intensive EMDR training last month. And, as part of it, somebody is facilitating the process on you. And I had a very powerful EMDR experience. And it was like my whole body felt like it was on fire. Like I was starting to sweat. And at the end, I was like, I am ravenous. Like I need to eat and I need to eat something right now. I was so
Yeah,
hungry.
yeah,
But you're right, because your body is it is taking up a lot of calories to process that intense stuff that's stuck in there.
right, right. And I remember reminding an individual client about this, that like you're doing EMDR, you need to be fueled. And they said, yeah, last week my therapist checked in, had I been eating, am I properly fueling myself? And I haven't been, and I hadn't eaten before a session. And so we had to skip doing EMDR because I wasn't firing on all cylinders. And it's just it's so energy zapping that in a good way, right?
Hmm.
It's such good deep work, but reminding and educating them that like you've got to be adequately fueled to go in and do that. And they might be arguing, well, I'm just sitting there. I'm like, yes, you are sitting there. And I tell that to a lot of my students that are in class for multiple hours. I'm like, yes, you are sitting in lecture and you are learning, you are retaining, you are understanding, you're taking in so much information. Your brain is, they just don't really maybe always get that piece, but I'm like, you got to trust me and you got to trust your body, that you do need more fuel than maybe your brain thinks, or your disordered eating part might be judging that you think you need. But yeah, so So those are just some little guidelines of, again, keeping it real basic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I always say meals and snacks do not have to be intricate or super duper fancy. They can be just, pretty simple peanut butter and jelly with, a couple of sides and a beverage. And, just rounding it out is a term I often like to use. If I hear a meal or a snack that's not rounded out, I'll say, how can we round that out a little bit more? And they usually have the answer. Most folks kind of, it's interesting because we have so much nutrition information out there,
Mm-hmm.
which to some degree can be helpful and another can be frustrating and confusing, right? And really challenging.
Totally.
But I feel like a lot of people, we're all kind of our own nutritionists, right? Like we kind of know what maybe an adequate meal looks like, what a rounded out meal looks like, but it's the whole piece of then getting that into action and getting that into our body is that's a whole nother process that, as a dietitian, focusing on this, that's kind of our line of work that we specialize in. So but yeah, it's just such a big part of the whole process, right?
Mm-hmm.
It would
Yeah.
sometimes use when I'm struggling, when the client's struggling to get it, I'm like, what if you every day just woke up and had a 6 pack a beer, like your day would be you'd be a little off, right? I'm trying to think of ways of how to, you're not firing on all cylinders, you're not kind of 100% present, you're not all there. And
Mm-hmm.
when we're restricting throughout the day or not adequately meeting our needs, we're kind of not all there too. And
Right.
so just I'm always trying to think of other metaphors or ideas on how to kind of send that message of how important nutrition is and how we live in a world that tells us less is more, thinner is better, right? Like it
Mm-hmm.
sends all these kind of beauty myths and body myths and um, all these messages of how we should look and what that means. And there's just, we just live in such a diet centric culture and world that most folks that work with us feel like kind of a breath of fresh air because we're giving them permission to
Yeah.
adequately fuel their body, which is feels like more than what our society tells us.
So much. I often wonder, I belong to a gym and it's like a hit gym. I love the working out part. Like that feels really good, but they also do like these challenges, right, to help people burn fat, get strong, get in shape. And and it doesn't really matter like which one you go to, which gym you go to. They all have this very rigid diet plan that you have to follow, and it's like macro counting and it what you can eat. There's so many limitations. I'm like, I can't do them. I can't. I just go, like I'm just going to totally fail at this because this is not any way how I would normally eat. Like you got to be cutting carbs and eating more protein and
Mhm.
I'm like, but I really like my vegetables. Like I would rather eat a ton of carby vegetables than eat only all protein.
Yeah.
And but I feel like it doesn't, like you were using that term rounded out, like that it doesn't ever really feel rounded out.
Hmm.
Um, but I also noticed, like, I was thinking about how the messaging there could be really triggering for someone
Yeah.
who has had a history of struggling with disordered eating,
Hmm.
um, or who might be on the edge there of like
Right.
that could push somebody into
Hmm.
that. I'm just wondering if you have observed anything like that in your work, since that's your specialization.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. All the time. All the time. I mean, when you mentioned the rigidity of that diet plan, my first thought was you and I connected on how just we're all just so busy. Like my first thought was like, gosh, who has time for that? Like, who has time to like count these things and macros and like be so rigid with like grocery shopping and cooking. And then the other piece that that I'm thinking of is ideally when we eat a meal, something that I work to guide and train clients on is aiming for some level of satisfaction and some level of fullness. Like we want to,
Mhm.
and when we cut out, let's say, carbohydrates, oh my gosh, how unsatisfying is that? And here we are trying to get satisfaction in maybe other ways, or trying to get it still through food. Yeah, it's just it sets people up. It sets people up
Mhm.
to be like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I follow this? It's like, oh, because it's a setup.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does bring that not enoughness piece up of like, well, I must not be good enough or disciplined enough or, something to be able to do this when all these other people are able to do it somehow.
Yeah.
Um, but I think like it's okay to say that's not right for me. And
Yeah.
I need to listen to my own body. Like you were saying, like if we slow ourselves down, our body really does tell us a lot about what it needs, when it needs more water, when it needs more rest,
Yeah.
when it's like you do need more fat. You're craving it and you're like, why
Yeah.
am I craving that? I never crave that.
Yeah.
There's something in there that your body is saying you need this because you're lacking it in some way.
Yeah. It makes me think of, I believe it's Judith Matz, who's a health at every size pioneer in our field. And she's has a quote that's people don't fail diets, diets fail people. I'm paraphrasing, but it's something like that. And so really getting that shift in um I guess mentality of like, there's nothing wrong with you. This is a setup. It's not it's just it's gonna it's you're gonna go down this path. It's gonna lead like everybody to this place of not feeling satisfied, craving things, denying yourself what your body is interested in, and yeah, craving what's missing, right?
Mhm.
And wanting what's missing, which makes sense. um and then yes, we know that the simple act of dieting can lead, it's fascinating to me because some people can casually diet and it doesn't turn into an eating disorder. Granted, it probably turns into some disordered eating. I mean, dieting in general is disordered. um, but um, but not everyone develops an eating disorder, and I've seen that in my practice, and I've been like, this, wow, like this is amazing. I don't know, you've been I remember having some folks work with me that are recovering from Weight Watchers, and um, I've just been like, I can't believe this hasn't turned into a full blown eating disorder, but it's been disordered for as long as they've been doing it, and so we're working on that recovery. Um, but then some people um, can start to diet, or even I oftentimes let people know, like, you know, the idea, typically it starts with a thought like, I'm healthy in quotes. I want to kind of, take care of my body, or get stronger, or it usually doesn't come into like, I want to not, completely restrict and cut calories and count calories. And, it ends up kind of turning into this beast of its own.
Mhm.
Uh, but it usually starts with a very like nice idea, like, it's January. Let's get healthy and try this thing. And let me get in more fruits and vegetables, and whatever the idea is. But then it can go down this path that actually gets them farther and farther from health, you
Right.
know.
Mhm.
So getting back, just sometimes vocalizing that, or in psychodrama, we double. And so I'll double a lot of that. It was like, I was just trying to do the right thing. I was just trying to get healthy. Um, I didn't want to, I didn't want to get to this point where now I actually need to go to the hospital and go to a higher level of care. So Yeah, it's tricky because it's
Mhm.
under the guise of health a lot of times, I'm doing this for my health. But it can take some time helping the client really get clarity on, well, now I'm actually farther from health than I want to be.
Right. And of course, the farther from physical health that we become, the harder we have to work to maintain our mental health because our energy sources are so depleted.
Right. Right.
Um,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so getting folks, I often tell people that if it's not uncommon for um, anyone to come through my door has been struggling their whole life with food. So it's rarely that it's like, oh, a year ago I started. It's usually like, no, since I was a kid, I've been um, eating this way or watching these things or had messages told me about my body. And so I often tell folks that um, one or two meals isn't going to repair this, right? Like there's a recovery period of regularly and consistently fueling your body. Just like if someone's sleep deprived, 1 or 2 nights of sleep isn't going to like boom, you're kind of well rested. It's like a
right.
process. And so that's also back to just answering that piece of like the role of the dietitian. That's also part of it. Is that we do get folks that are malnourished um, and need that kind of regular, consistent fueling over time. I
Mm,
think, yeah, and then the next piece oftentimes is getting tuned into their hunger and fullness. And like you said, all those messages that the body, all that information, that wisdom, right? Our body is
right.
our wisdom, and getting connected with that, which again, bringing it back to just the expressive arts and how wonderful all of these modalities are with getting us embodied in our body, and
Mhm.
getting us tuned into it, which can be really scary for someone with eating issues. They don't want to be in their body, right?
Yeah. Well, I think they've become so masterful at not listening to the cues and tuning them out that they're not even registering in some cases anymore.
Right, right. Yeah, and then it's a fascinating development, but a lot of times what I see is the more adequately fueled they are, the more their body has the energy to say, "Hey, I'm hungry." Right? And give out those cues. Like it takes energy for the body to give these cues. And then recovery starts to build some roots and kind of get embedded in their day-to-day life where they're like, well, now I'm waking up and I'm actually within like half hour or so, I'm feeling some hunger. And I'm over here in my head, like, so excited. Yay, this is what. And they're terrified because hunger is so scary because it's this
Sure.
catastrophic thinking of food. Yeah, if I eat, and not for everybody, but if I like food is going to cause me to gain weight. And that's my biggest fear, weight gain. My body's never going to stop gaining weight. It's going to be this kind of runaway train. And I oftentimes reassure them that um, your body knows and not to fear the hunger. Um, we've got to learn to listen to it and to show up for it and to honor it as best you can. So it's a whole process. The dietitian is brings in so much to the whole eating. It's relational work is kind of how we look at
Yeah.
it. How I look at
Yeah.
it.
What
Yeah,
is it? It is a very intimate relationship,
it is. Yeah, it is.
right? And then it
Mhm.
becomes like an abusive relationship.
Yeah, right.
It in
Right.
and like the same type of dynamics that are present in kind of interpersonal violence,
Hmm.
then they become manifest in this relationship with the um, whatever it might be, whether that's food, it could be something else that people are ingesting too.
Hmm.
Or it could any addiction really, right? It could be a process, it could be a product, it doesn't really matter, but those dynamics are at play
Hmm.
there, right?
Yeah, and this is reminding me of the work I've done early on as a dietitian and folding in psychodrama into sessions where if I hear of a regular struggle with a certain food, whether they're fearing it, restricting it, binging it, whatever, um, we'll put it in the chair, the actual food in the chair, and I'll do a warming up process to it. And I'd say maybe there's a little bit of a split here. Half the time, the food's pretty benign. It's like, I don't know what you want from me, you know? I'm just some eggs and flour and some sugar and um, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and I'll do a whole like interviewing of where do you live in Mary's house, or and where what store do you come from, and are you aware she's struggling with you? And yeah, I think she hates me, you know? And it's like, well, how do you feel about that? And it can be fun and playful. And at least I try to lighten it up because the eating disorder can be not so fun and playful most of the time.
Right.
So here we are lightening it up, and a little bit of levity. And and then there are times where the voice of that food is so harsh and mean and punitive and
Yeah.
shaming. And from there, then I can say, I can reverse them back to the rest of themselves and say, gosh, Sam, who does this cookie, let's say, it's pretty harsh and mean. Like, who in your life sounds like this? And then we're off to the races with the real encounter that needs to happen, right? And the real repair in the relationship. Because oftentimes our food does have a voice, and people report that it like beckons me from the cupboard, or um, so
Yeah.
I'm remembering another time where we put some food, I'm not even remember exactly, it was beckoning this individual, and we got it in the chair and reversed roles with it, and ultimately it was it was telling this individual, you've got to have more fun in your life. You need to go
Oh,
dancing, and you need to go out and socialize. And this was pre-pandemic. Um, and they ended up signing up for some dance lessons and really getting just this another whole embodied journey that
mhm.
I never would have thought. I'm hearing that you need to go sign up for these salsa lessons, where that would never come from anything, but the food had all of this amazing
Knowledge.
information
Mhm.
of what's really being missing in her life, is that she's eating me trying to find this sensuality and this movement and this fun and this forbiddenness that
Right.
I didn't know. So that's why, again, I cannot say enough about how much I love action methods and particularly psychodrama, because it does all of this work that I just didn't know until we get it into action and we discover, and then clients can just blossom and go and do and put these ideas into action in their life.
I love it so much. It's such rich work, and of course, there's so much depth there, um, that that is coming out by those dialogues that you're having with the food. It's really cool. And I have to kind of go on a tangent because I just noticed that you have a collection of the most beautiful feminine sculptures behind you on your shelf of the female body in all different shapes and sizes. And I just love those.
Yeah, I have. Venus of Willendorf is, I
Hmm.
was lucky enough to go to the museum in Austria, and they have all of these goddesses. They have a whole goddess section. And so I have more in another room in the office, because I always think like, when we think about all the bodies that we see, right?
Hmm.
We kind of get the same message over and over and over and over. And I said, I want um the bodies that we don't see, in the office,
Yes, I
and the
love it.
bodies right? So it's been part of my, I don't know, something fun when I'm traveling or when I see just different sculptures. These are actually some candles. Um,
They're
yeah,
candles.
yeah,
Unbelievable.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
so cool.
I can send you the link if you want to add that. Um,
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, and so there's all of these um beautiful goddess bodies that, because I think the Venus of Willendorf, gosh, is it 30,000 BC or something? Like these are the bodies that were worshipped, and what we have, to see
Hmm.
bodies from back then. So um yeah, it's been fun collecting those, and it's also a really nice learning opportunity to look at all the different bodies that have been, I guess, worshipped or, you know,
And
pedestalized. Yeah.
yeah, seen as like what's desirable, right? What's desirable, or considered ideal in
Hmm.
one time period is not in another. And it certainly, I think, mirrors kind of access to, right?
Hmm.
In time periods where maybe larger bodies were more idolized.
Hmm.
I think it might have been, well, those people have access to food, nutrition, resources, um,
Yeah.
and so that's celebrated. And now we're in a time where we have plenty, at least us in the United States and our westernized culture, many of us have access to um, so many choices of how what to put in our bodies. And now it's kind of the opposite, which is interesting.
It is. Yeah. 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 Oh God, yeah. And I'm always just saying, how can we let our bodies be, right? Not try to fix, manage, or control, and just really let our bodies guide us, and listen to that wisdom. And then I'm a big fan of DBT, kind of the wise mind, right? Like there's logically, right? There's the
Sure.
logical piece, and then there's the emotional piece. And I use that a lot with food as well. Like logically, I know um uh it's time for me to eat. Emotionally, it's, let's say it's freezing cold in Chicago, which is a lot of the time.
Yep.
And so I'm wanting something warm and nurturing, like a maybe a warm stew or some hot soup and some crusty bread or something. And so I'm going to put in logically what that I need to eat, and then emotionally pull that piece in. I think that would be really satisfying in my body, is a hot, versus maybe a diet that's like, oh, you should have a cold, crisp salad. And it's like, well, it's -30. I'm like, that's just not going to hit the spot. Um, and
And
so really, yeah, tapping into,
realistically, you wouldn't have that accessible to you living in that kind of climate.
right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, folding those in, or folding that concept, but using it with food, the wise mind and the, yeah,
I love that
work.
integration.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that's so much of my work. And then when I am in the role of therapist in the treatment team, because more often than not, we have a team of a therapist, a dietitian, a psychiatrist, a medical doctor, and sometimes there's PT or OT or um, um, different other disciplines for just the whole, approach to getting them the best care. But when I'm in the role of therapist, um, I'm mainly working with folks that have eating struggles, and um, yeah, just doing this work and then collaborating with their dietitian. But it's been fun to see both sides, and um, it's just been really fun. There's never a dull moment, I always say.
No, I imagine not. And each person is different. So even though, right, there's lots of similarities in what we're doing, the way it presents itself is always so different and unique for each person that we're working with. That certainly, I don't think any therapist could ever say their work is boring,
Sure, right. Yeah,
right?
hopefully not. Yeah,
Like it's there's always something happening that like even as you've been doing the work for 20 years, right? I'm sure you're like, wow, that's a surprise. That like this is
yeah,
new to me. I've been doing this for a really long time, but there's still always surprises happening. Um,
yeah.
that keeps us engaged, I think.
I agree, and I feel like I learn so much every day from clients. Like, I love how much they teach me. Oh my gosh, even if it's like pop culture stuff and like, I just feel like I learn so much from them or, you know, new phrases in our language or yeah, just different
Absolutely.
TikToks or yeah, it's just really fun. They're so creative and um yeah, so I'm always learning and then yeah, studying what we do because um that's there's always new modalities or ways to help people. That's something that I am always just kind of active in, which I love learning.
Yeah, me too. It's fun and it's exciting too when you learn something that you can implement and put into action and it really produces meaningful results for the people that you're working with. That is like so just it feels nourishing to the soul, I think, when we're able to do that.
Yeah.
And as much as you're learning, you're also sharing your knowledge and wisdom and practice techniques. What are you going to be teaching at the upcoming Expressive Therapies Summit? I know you have a few different workshops. What's the first one going to be?
Yeah, I need to pull that up. Give me one moment.
No, that's okay. I think it's the opener, like you're doing like a special opening event to promote the
Oh,
upcoming Midwest Expressive Therapy Summit that's going to be live in person in Chicago, which is super exciting.
yes, it is. So that's on May 21st. It's a Sunday. And the name of that is Integrating Brené Brown's Daring Way with Expressive Arts for Courageous Healing and Transformation. So as you mentioned earlier, I am a certified Daring Way facilitator and um, I've also folded as I teach that curriculum, I fold in psychodramatic and sociometric activities or modalities or methods to really deepen the lessons that Brene teaches in her research about wholehearted living or resilient, shame resiliency, self-compassion practices, empathy. So it's again, my clients have a lot of fun with that. And that is going to be a Zoom event. But yeah, it's kind of to get people warmed up for the actual in person in uh, yeah, in the Chicago
June?
area. Yeah, in
Yeah.
June. Yeah. And then in June, I am co-presenting with my colleague, Dr. Brittany Lakenstar, who's also a psychodramatist. Um, and also we co-direct the Chicago Center for Psychodrama here in Chicago, where every month we have live and in-person trainings at our beautiful space in Chicago. But what we're going to be presenting on is embodied healing, where we're using action techniques and psychodrama to transform um, the treatment of eating disorders. So it's both of our specialties is to use these methods and work with folks that get stuck or trapped in their eating disorder. Um, and then I will also be doing um, another presentation individually on the importance of nutrition in trauma recovery for all counselors and therapists. So I'll be going over that, um, kind of a little bit of what I talked about today, you
Yeah.
know?
I feel like we touched on a lot of it, except kind of some of the daring way approaches. But I think listeners are most people are familiar with uh, Dr. Brené Brown's work, and sounds like it's going to be an exciting sessions
Mhm.
all around. And I know that when we first started talking, you had said for listeners that would be interested, you have a couple of giveaways. And so let's talk about those.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to share a free download of um it's called the Guide to Nourished Living, that I created. And also on May 20th, which is a Saturday, at the Chicago Center for Psychodrama is putting on an open demonstration of psychodrama. So it's open to the public. And I'm happy to um, remind me what we, Raina,
We,
remind me what we discussed.
we had talked about if the first person to email you directly with the creative psychotherapist in the subject line could get free admission to that psychodrama workshop that you're going to be having on the 20th.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah. And that, yes, we're really excited. This will be the first open demonstration in person since the pandemic. I was hosting them, yeah, up until the pandemic, and they were a really wonderful turnout. We usually get 20 or 30 people, and they, people that have never experienced it get to come and have a taste and a sample of it without having to sign up for a full training if they know nothing about it. Also get to do their own personal work. That's usually what people come to do, is they want to do some personal work. So myself and Dr. Mallory Prim will be conducting and facilitating this open demonstration on May 20th. Again, it's in person in Chicago. So yeah, I'm happy to give away admission to that, and the free download of the Guide to Nourished Living.
And so, if anybody's listening, if you would like either one of those things, all you need to do is email Kate at nourishedliving.com.
It's actually Kate at nourishmentworks.com.
Nourishmentworks.com. I'm sorry, the guide to Nourished Living was the
Yes.
giveaway.
Yes.
It's Kate at nourishmentworks.com. And I'll put that in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
Um, Gosh, I wish Chicago was closer. I would love to attend the open
Yeah.
demonstration. That sounds really fun and
It is.
exciting.
It is. We have a lot of fun, lots of laughs. Like it's almost like a social, also networking event. We have just snacks and beverages available. So it's like come. And this, we used to do them on Friday nights, but now we're trying to just do it on a kind of a Saturday early evening. It's from 4 to 6 p.m. So folks can get together and maybe do dinner afterwards if they'd like. But it's just kind of to meet people doing this work, and also introduce people that have never heard of it or seen it.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah,
love it.
we always have a good time. So
Well, I am super appreciative of your time that you spent with me today talking about your work. And if folks wanted to learn more about your practice, where should they go?
yeah, there are two places to go. The first is nourishmentworks.com. That is our nutrition and counseling practice for eating disorder recovery. And then Chicago psychodrama.com is where they can find all of our trainings. And we even have a student collective for students that are registered students of psychodrama. We get together to practice our skills as students, which is
Wonderful.
yeah, it's really fun. It's a great place because so much of psychodrama in these expressive arts, we need practice. We need a lot of
Mhm.
practice. And so um, I started it when I was a psychodrama student because I needed a place where I know people know this method and they're not going to judge or criticize or critique me as I'm kind of stumbling through and getting my sea legs and learning.
Mhm.
And so it's a place where all of us students can get together. Someone can do some personal work, or a lot of us do. We know in psychodrama, whether we're in the audience member, an auxiliary, or the protagonist, we all benefit from the work. And so we get that piece out of it. And then we get to kind of practice. I used to say, hey, I want to start this group. So I want to just throw out some ideas and just put them in action. And I want to practice, I need a guinea pig, I want to practice on
Mhm.
things in this group um, to see what I like and what needs to be edited or shifted, what works, what doesn't. And so it's been fun. And then our trainings every month, I can't say enough about um, the trainings that we host. We have a lot of different topics. And yeah, so we're just having fun with psychodrama in Chicago and um, we're hoping to get, because myself and Dr. Lakenstar and Dr. Prim, we all love psychodrama so much. We're working to train others and just
Mhm.
grow the field and grow the clinicians and get a nice psychodrama community growing.
I love that. It sounds like an incredible resource for the Chicago area to have that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Kate. I really appreciate you being here, and I hope your sessions are very well attended at the upcoming summit. It sounds like people are going to walk away with a lot of tools that they can put into action with the work that they're doing to help their clients. So, thank you so
Yeah.
much for sharing your gifts.
Thank you, Raina. I really appreciated the time today and just being able to talk shop. I love talking shop. And so thanks for this opportunity. It's been lovely.
Yes, it really has, and you're very welcome. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Creative Psychotherapist podcast. I hope you enjoyed this latest installment of the Voices from the Expressive Therapy Summit special series. I really enjoyed my conversation with Kate today. I hope you did too. She has a tremendous amount of wisdom and knowledge, particularly in the area of treatment of eating disorders, using both her foundations as a dietitian and long history in that career, and then integrating it with the more expressive and experiential practices of psychodrama. She just I think her training is going to be amazing. Just the tidbits of how she's using this work with her client that she shared in the show, I thought were really fabulous. Um, and remember, if you are in the area there and you want to attend her upcoming um, psychodrama workshop, which is open to the public. It's going to be on Saturday, May 20th from 4 to 6 p.m. at the Chicago Center for Psychodrama. All you need to do is email her directly at Kate, Kate, at nourishmentworks.com. And in the subject line, write the creative psychotherapist. And the first email that she receives, they're going to receive a free admission to that workshop on May 20th. And if you were interested in getting a copy of her guide to nourished living, you can also email her too, and she'll send that along to you. Again, that's Kate at nourishmentworks.com. And of course, she's going to be teaching three great workshops, the one online featuring Brené Brown's Daring Way, integrating expressive arts. That's going to be virtual on May 21st in anticipation and promotion for the Chicago event. Um, And then she's also going to be teaching 2 workshops at the live in-person Midwest Summit on embodied healing, using action techniques and psychodrama to transform the treatment of eating disorders with her colleague, Dr. Brittany Lakin-Starr. And that's on June 25th in the morning. And then in the afternoon on June 25th, she's going to be teaching on the importance of nutrition and trauma recovery for all therapists. So all really great opportunities to learn from a very knowledgeable and talented practitioner. And I hope you follow through and check out her work. Okay, everybody, thanks so much for listening. And if you like what you hear, please do rate, subscribe, and provide feedback wherever you listen to the podcast. Stay creative. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Creative Psychotherapist. If you like what you heard, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. For show notes, downloads, and additional resources, head over to the website at www.creativeclinicianscorner.com.